Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Radio Pulso, also known as the Boyle Heights Beat podcast. I'm so excited to be here. This is my first time co-hosting, and I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Stephanie Perez. I am currently a sophomore at Francisco Bravo Medical Magnet High School. I've lived in Boyle Heights my whole life, and I've been a youth reporter for Boyle Heights Beat for about a year now. My first story here was about La Virgen de Guadalupe, and how she remains powerful throughout generations. And I'm currently working on a story about the Benjamin Franklin Branch Library. Joining me today is my co-host, Dania Alejandres. How are you feeling today, Dania?
Howdy, y'all. I'm feeling great today because finals are over and we're having a winter break. This is my first time co-hosting. My name is Daniel Alejandres and I've lived in Boyle Heights before, but I currently live in East LA. I'm attending Francisco Bravo Medical Magnet High School as well. I've been a youth reporter for Boyle Heights Beat for around a year now, and I did a story on a historic restaurant in Boyle Heights, and I'm currently writing one about a coffee shop on South Soto Street. I'm a big fan of all food that is tasty, and Boyle Heights has plenty of that.
And very quickly, we just want our audience to know that we're a radio program and podcast brought to you by the community news outlet Boyle Heights Beat. This is a program that trains local high school students to publish a community newspaper, and it also produces this very own podcast, hence us being here today. So, what do we have going on today, Dania?
It's December and we're ready to get into the holiday spirit. Earlier this month, we participated in the Boyle Heights Christmas parade and we had community members share their holiday traditions with us. So we'll be taking a listen to that in a couple of minutes. Tamales are food you eat at parties with your Latine family and other people you love. Tamales are often seen at bautismos, fiestas, and posadas. This holiday food is symbolic for family and community. And speaking of tamales, today we will be interviewing Boyle Heights resident Marlene Aguilar, who offers plant-based options including vegan tamales to her community.
Before we dive into our interview, let's take a listen for a few interviews we did at the Boyle Heights Christmas parade.
I got the chance to talk to Camarina Perez, a Boyle Heights resident who also happens to be Stephanie's mom. Let's take a listen to what traditions she participates in during the holidays. ¿Qué vas a hacer para los días festivos?
¿Qué voy a hacer?
Ajá.
Pues a celebrar con mi familia una cena navideña y hacer juegos y pasárnosla bonito.
Qué bueno, qué bueno. Mi segunda pregunta es, ¿cuáles son sus tradiciones favoritas navideños?
Hay muchas. Tamales, de la comida, los tamales, hacemos barbacoa, hacemos pavo también, mi concuña lo hace, hacemos juegos, nos vestimos todos iguales. A veces hacemos la posada porque depende del clima, sí. Pero rompemos piñatas, hacemos posada del nacimiento, pidiendo posada. Una parte de la familia se sale al corral y otro se queda adentro y pedimos posada y llevamos dulces y hacemos ponche y hacemos todo eso. Arrollamos al niñito Dios porque creemos en el niñito Dios. Ajá. Esas son unas de nuestras tradiciones que no olvidamos.
Sí.
So, Dania, what are your favorite holiday traditions?
So, my favorite holiday traditions are eating tamales, pozole, birria. Oh my god, my neighbor makes like the best you've ever seen. It's so good. Green pozole is my favorite, by the way. Green supremacy. What about you? What do you do during the holidays?
My family loves to dress up. We like doing pajamas or playing games. Obviously, a lot of food. We love tamales, barbacoa, aguachile, even in this weather. Yeah, our family loves food, and traditions are very important. We love doing the posadas and, arrollando al niñito Dios. But yeah, that's fun.
I'm so jealous of all the food you just mentioned.
We also got to talk to Santa Claus. Let's see what he's doing for the holidays.
Hi, my name is Amy Mendieta Soto. I'm here at Mariachi Plaza with Boyle Heights B, and I'm here with
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. So I just wanted to ask you a couple questions. So what are you going to do for the holidays?
I will spend time after everything is done, passing all the toys. I will be spending time with family and just relaxing for a few days. Santa's, Mrs. Claus's birthday is on the 27th, so we're going to enjoy our time together.
Thank you. And what are your favorite holiday traditions?
Favorite holiday traditions is parades. Boyle Heights Parade is one of those ones. I've been helping out with parades in this community for the last 15 years. Being part of this community means a lot to me. Knowing what this community has offered to do, from the Boyle Heights Beat to the Boyle Heights Tech Center to everything that goes on in this community. There's so much to be grateful for.
And that was Boyle Heights Santa. I remember when I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real. I went into the closet and I found wrapping paper that matched the gift I got from Santa Claus. My mom happened to walk in the room at the exact moment and told me to put it back. We never talked about it again. What about you? When did you find out that Santa Claus wasn't real?
What do you mean, Danya? What do you mean Santa Claus isn't real?
Moving on.
No, but I remember when I found Santa Claus wasn't real. We were in the parking lot in front of a Walmart, and my mom had just gotten our gifts for Christmas. So I asked my dad, like, wasn't Santa supposed to come? And he said, well, you know what? Santa just gives me the money. So that's how I found out.
Oh my god. So terrible. Well, not really. Well, enough talk about Santa Claus. Let's talk about food, especially tamales, which seems to be everybody's go-to food during the holidays.
With us here, we have Marlene Aguilar. Marlene is Chicana and of Purepecha descent. Born and raised in Tongva territory in what is known as East Los Angeles with roots in the Intermountain Valley region of Michoacán, Mexico. As a community-based cocinera, she draws inspiration from her campesina family. She has also been shaped by her work in different food equity programs, specifically through community-supported agriculture. She is founder of the food project Irecuaricua, which aims to offer seasonally inspired, affordable plant-based meals while highlighting the resilience of indigenous foods. Her project is currently offering a meal prep service like comida corrida from fondas or cocinas económicas found throughout Mexico.
Hi, Marlene. Thank you so much for being here. I heard that you've been preparing some tamales for an event this weekend. How's that been going?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've been busy. It's tamal season. And it's a lot of work because I actually prepare the tamales from scratch. So I cook the dry corn in cal, and that's the process of nixtamalization. So I cook it, then I grind it, and then I prepare the masa, which, the fat and the seasoning and stuff like that. And then I also prepare the fillings and, assemble them and then cook. So it's a pretty thorough process, but that's one of the reasons why I only make tamales during this time of year, because it would be a lot.
Yeah, of course. Since we are in the holiday season, what holiday traditions do you celebrate within your family?
Usually it's either pozole, tamales, or buñuelos and atole. Those are basically just kind of the main things we do. Really, all we do is really eat. The majority of my family is in Mexico, and so it's really just my nuclear family, my parents, my brother, sister-in-law. New addition, I have some nieces, twin nieces, and then my partner. And so it's just us. So really it's just we get together and just enjoy a meal and just hang out, enjoy the time that we all have off.
Personally, my favorite part of the holidays is eating.
Yes.
What is the significance of tamales within Latine culture?
Well, Latino culture involves a lot of different folks, right? So I'm going to specifically focus on the Mexican culture because I am Mexican descent. But yeah, there's a variety of different tamales all throughout Latin America. And it's pretty amazing, right? Because you think about it, maíz is born in Mesoamerica, and it extends down to South America and up to like New York State area. So it's pretty amazing, and how all the variations of tamales that have resulted, right? Specifically for the Mexican community, I mentioned earlier to Jackie when talking to her, is that tamales usually are associated with Christmas, right, and New Year's. But tamales existed before people started celebrating Christmas in the Americas. Corn is about 8,000 years old. Tamales is roughly around the same. But Christianity wasn't in the Americas till the colonial settlers, the Spanish, came to the Americas. So that's 500 and plus years. So tamales actually, I feel then, is a celebration of the harvest of maize. In Mexico specifically, maize is harvested in late November or December. And typically, maize takes about 7 months to grow from seed to dry and so to harvest. And so usually it's planted around June, and that's when the rainy season happens in Mexico. And so back in the day, we didn't have irrigation systems and sewage systems like we have now. And so most people depended on the rain specifically to grow their harvest. And so when it's time to harvest, it's a celebration. It's we're talking about big pieces of land that are, were planted, that need harvesting. You need a lot of different hands, either all your family, immediate or extended, come together to harvest. And mind you, for the harvest, you start running out of maize. It's not like here at the store when you could go to the tortilleria if you're in East LA or Boyle Heights. Right before, it was just like what is available is available. It's really, I think, a celebration of how well the harvest went, being grateful to nature, right, for being able to have maize, and not just in that moment, right, of harvest time, but all throughout the year, because people usually planted enough maize to last them for the next harvest. So I think it's really a reflection of just kind of like our agricultural just cycle. Yeah, and so it's deep within our tradition and culture that we still remember it. And so even though now it has more religious ties, but I feel like it's older than that.
What inspired you to start cooking plant-based meals, and are you vegan yourself?
What inspired me? Okay, so I was in college. I was taking a nutritional science course, public health course, and we were talking about how prevalent diabetes and these diet related illnesses were in communities of color. And one of the main things that we talked about was lack of access to healthy foods in communities, so like East LA, Boyle Heights, right? And an overabundance of liquor stores and just, fast food. And so then I thought, well, I want to be able to provide access, because that's one of the things that was the main issue. That, and then also our culture currently is really meat like heavy, right? And so there's a variety, overabundance of meat options in the community: tacos, hamburguesas, pizza, right? And so I wanted to offer something different. I was vegan strictly maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, more than that. But with time, as I've kind of researched how my ancestors ate, they did eat meat, but it was a seasonal thing, and it wasn't every meal, 3 meals a day. Yeah. And so now I do eat meat. I eat things like turkey, bison, and lamb. So basically, it's like I eat mostly native meats, and not all the time. So turkey is seasonal. Turkey, you started seeing it around things, Turkey Day, Thanksgiving, and then bison ever so often because it's kind of pricey. So, and it's grass fed. So it's those kind of things. I focus more on quality than just the stuff that you see like at the store. But I'm mostly plant based. So I do eat. I'm a gardener too. I'm an urban gardener, and I try to plant as many vegetables as possible because I am big on making sure my food is free of toxins and pesticides. And so whatever I have in my garden, I grow and I eat.
It's very interesting. I have noticed like how Boyle Heights and East LA is like filled with like fast foods and like not as much organic options that are like available. Like they're more expensive than like the ones like that have pesticides and all that.
Exactly.
So why do you think cultural foods having vegan options is like important?
It's important because it's you're trying to be inclusive of everyone. Often I remember when I was strictly vegan, it was I felt left out, that nobody thought of me, and oftentimes I would have to make my own food. So I'm a cook, and that's not a problem. But there are some vegans that aren't really into the kitchen, but they need to eat. So I think it's important to incorporate them, and then but also have agency as vegans and make space, like claim space, within family gatherings. And that's by way of like bringing your own dish enough, not just for yourself, for other people, right? So folks could taste and they could be like, oh, this isn't too bad. It's not, because people usually, I don't know, there's a certain idea of what vegan food is or what healthy food is. But if you include the same sazon that you would a meat-based dish, it's so good.
Yeah, I know, like typically a lot of Mexican families, though me personally, those things aren't very common and they're not really accepted. People would be like, I'm good.
And it's so interesting you say that because like there are so many dishes that are like Mexican or Latino that are veggie or vegan.
Deny it as soon as they see the word vegan.
Right. And so one for instance, like for Catholics when they celebrate Lent, there's so many different dishes that come out and they're vegetarian.
All of a sudden.
You're like, whoa, what happened here? And then also too, for instance, my parents come from Mexico. They come from Michoacan, specifically from very rural communities. And I remember asking them, so what are some dishes you guys ate? And the majority, like when they were really, really young, they didn't really eat a lot of meat. It was only if my grandfathers specifically on each side went to hunting. And it was only then when they were able to get some. It wasn't until later on that meat became more accessible. And so it's just like, well, then what did you guys eat? And she's like, oh, well, we calacitas and papas and all kinds of different things. I'm like, you see, it's not, it's just you forgot.
Yeah.
There's this lack of memory,
Don't. Me personally, I think my parents don't want to remember that poverty that they had.
Exactly.
So it's more like, oh well, we have meat now. We can eat it. We don't have to be afraid where.
And for me, it's just balance. It's just balancing out your macronutrients.
How did you learn to cook these plant-based meals?
I learned asking my mom. I moved away from East LA when I was after high school. I went to college up to the Bay Area, and I didn't know how to cook before I left. I was very dependent on my mother. I actually resisted the kitchen because I'm like, no, I'm a feminist and I don't belong in the kitchen. But then I wanted real Mexican food, and it's like, uh-oh. So then I had to call my mom and learn by myself with her guidance, of course. And then also, because during that time I was involved in different food projects, there was always like the scenario when they had leftover cases of something. And it's like, oh, well, how do you do this? How can I use this in 10 different ways? So honestly, I would just Google and then either follow the recipe or just kind of get an idea and get inspired. And then further on in different other projects, yeah, I was given the task of like helping Latin American communities eat veggies that probably are not familiar, like yeah, that they're not familiar to them. And so I would just incorporate different veggies, but with the same sazon, with the same cooking techniques and stuff like that. And yeah, that's just really how I learned how to experiment. And it's a lot of trial and error, but it honestly made the kitchen exciting for me, because like I mentioned, I resisted when I was a teenager, but because there is this, I was introduced to a variety of different vegetables that I probably wasn't really accustomed to. It made it exciting. And so I think that's, and I hadn't seen the kitchen as something exciting. I had seen something as like, oh, my mom's going to yell at me that I'm not doing it right or I'm not doing it fast enough, things like that. So yeah, so that's just how I learned throughout the years.
So, what kind of plant-based tamales do you make yourself?
My specialty is blue corn tamales. I started using blue corn because when I started becoming really into ancestral foods, I knew that yellow corn that was grown here in the United States was either GMO, genetically modified. And so I wanted to avoid that corn. And so I knew that blue corn wasn't genetically modified and that it would be safer. So then my mom taught me how to make nistamal a few years back, and we started making every kind of maize thing from tortillas, gorditas, sopes, tamales, and she taught me how to do it. And so, like I mentioned, plant-based, the fillings. Oh, so I use vegetarian shortening, non-hydrogenated, as for the fat. And then as for the fillings, I substitute the meat with mushrooms, with oyster mushrooms specifically, because they shred very similar to, it looks like shredded carne, like meat. So I make oyster mushrooms in guajillo sauce. So I use basically the same sauce that my mom would for the pork. cheese is pork red sauce, but I substitute the pork with the mushrooms. I also make rajas with vegan cheese. I also make some turkey tamales. They're not specifically plant based, but I substitute the pollo, the chicken, with turkey because turkey is a Native American meat. It's native to the Americas. And then the other ones that I like to do, the sweet corn tamales, I make out of chocolate. And so it's nothing but chocolate and it tastes like a brownie.
Oh my god, that sounds.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your food projects. How did you come up with the idea of the name?
Okay, so Irecuaricua is a Purepecha word, indigenous language of Michoacan, the region of Michoacan. And when I was taking a language class and I came across a word, I thought it was really beautiful because it translates to way of life, forma de vida. And I thought that was a beautiful word that captured all my interests from growing food to researching and bringing back ancestral foods to cooking seasonally, cooking by the seasons, cooking things that are just currently in harvest, right? And I just feel like it reflects really a way of life. You plant your seeds, you take tend to them, you compost, all that stuff, right? And harvest it when it's in season, cook it. It's more of a lifestyle than a trend. And so the food project is I do catering more now than the meal service. I was offering a meal service. And the idea was to provide meals that people could have using seasonal produce so they could have them throughout the week as like a lunch. And but I stopped doing that. Just a lot of work. And I just needed a break. But yeah, so I offer catering. I have a small garden, but I try to use the stuff in my garden. Quality produce is something that, like you mentioned earlier, we don't have readily available here in the East LA, Boyle Heights area. And so I try to grow a little bit more of what I'm going to consume so that I could incorporate it into, the foods I cook for people. So yeah, so whatever's in season. So for instance, right now, what's in season is like lettuce, planting some lettuce or have some lettuce ready to go for future catering gigs that I have coming up.
So, what food equity programs have you been part of?
I've been part of different ones. For instance, here in LA, it's called Food Not Bombs or Comida No Bomba specifically. So basically, we would go to farmers markets. At the end of the farmers markets, get donations from the vendors, food that they don't want to take back or they don't have the capacity to keep, specifically like fridge space. And we would take it and then cook it and then distribute in areas like Skid Row, just wherever folks needed a meal. And then I worked with a housing developer here who offered nutrition education programs and also access to organic foods in their housing developments in the like Echo Park, Highland Park, Pomona area. And my role there was nutrition education to try to, so basically it was providing spaces for people to cook healthier. And then when I was in the Bay Area, I was part of a organic farm, a CSA program specifically, community supported agriculture. And we worked with a farmer, and a small farmer to either plant things in the greenhouse, hand weed, different things like that. And yeah, I think that's all I could think of right now.
How does your community react to the work that you're doing?
My community supports me. They hire me for their community events, because they see, that I'm offering something that's lacking. So yeah, it's mostly support. They just hook me up with gigs. And I really deeply appreciate that. I don't know who's gonna hear this, but yes, if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be able to be sustainable. So it's usually word of mouth. I don't have like a big marketing thing or well-known brand, but people just hire me on to do things for them. And it's interesting because sometimes some people have tried my food without even knowing me, and then I'll meet them and be like, "Oh, I tried your food before." I was like, "Oh, great," you know. So that's how my community reacts. You know, they support me and just always sharing my name in spaces or rooms where it applies. You know, so I am really grateful for them.
Is there like anything else you want to talk about?
I would just encourage folks to, to develop the relationship with food. Oftentimes, food is seen like it's in our culture, it's been commodified. And so it's not given its proper place as it was, feel like, long time ago with our ancestors. And so developing our relationship with food is going to make us healthier physically, our bodies. But then as we further develop that, it could also make our environment also cleaner, healthier. And so I understand that in urban spaces in the city, it's sometimes more difficult, but it's not impossible. And so, I just really encourage folks to just plant a seed if you can of something that you like, that's manageable. Start small so you could see what it takes, all the energy and work that goes to cultivating that, so that the value of food and the people that cook it and grow it is heightened, or it's that work is valued more, because I feel like it's not. The kitchen work is paid really bad. And also the farm workers are paid really bad. And so I would want us to just really think about that a little bit more, reflect a little bit about that. And I think that's pretty much it. And just be grateful. Can't take for granted the elements, water. Here in California, we're in a drought, specifically Southern California. So just being more mindful too of how we use our water, that's important too.
Thank you so much, Marlene. This was a really interesting conversation.
Thank you. And yeah, if folks could follow me on Instagram, handle is Irequaricua. It's really, like I said, a mouthful, but I'll say it slower. Irequaricua. Irequaricua. And again, that means way of life in Purepecha. So yeah, follow me, and so you're able to see when I do my pop-ups and things like that. I'm actually going back to the kitchen to make tamales now. I'll be in the East Side Cafe Mercado tomorrow, but I know that this will be aired later than that. But I'm also going to be offering tamales next week. And so in case you hear this while you're eating your tamales and you're like, "Oh, I want to try those tamales," I'm also going to be making tamales in February for the Dia de la Candelaria, which is tamal season stuff. So anyways, keep your eye out. And just thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for our Radio Pulso podcast. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Daniel Alejandres.
And I'm Stephanie Perez. If you want to pitch us an idea for the radio show or our newspaper, send us an email at boyleheightsb@gmail.com. That's boyleheightsb@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from all of you, as we pride ourselves in offering noticias por y para la comunidad. Or we'd even love to have you on our show. Also, make sure to check us out on social media to stay up to date. You can follow our Radio Pulso Instagram account at Radio Pulso.
Thanks to the people who make Boyle Heights Beat possible, especially Chris Kelly and Antonio Mejias Rentas. A huge thank you to our radio producer Jackie Ramirez for engineering the show today. You'll hear from us at the start of next year.
Don't forget to tune in. Until then, suerte, Boyle Heights. Nos vemos en la calle.
Bye.